Hello. This is a video that responds to my friend Vivian. We've never met, but she sounds funny, and she asked me a question about sculpting and what happens if there's negative cash flow in the early periods with sculpting. And I think that's a fantastic question. I suggested there might be three kind of different ways to do this. Now, I'm going to try to answer this with a video as we just proceed. And the first thing let's do is let's kind of have a phase. This could be a toll road project. Or any kind of where we have different phases, and the final phase there's some cash flow coming in, but it's not quite enough to pay the cash flow, or we have some increasing revenues because the people can't figure out that there's a tollway nearby and use it. So let's put some assumptions. Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be a video about sculpting and negative cash flow kind of in early periods. And then we'll have how about we'll have cash flow, and I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. And yes, and we'll have project 1, control B, and then I'll make it project 2 and project 3. And for these three cash flows, let's put the starting numbers, something like this, okay? Maybe we'll change that. So starting cash flow. And then we'll put some growth. Okay, and excuse me, I'm sitting on some kind of thing that I could get in trouble for. Let's say this is 2%. And this is 4%, and this is 1%, so I don't know. And now the date, let's put the date of the start. So let's make this date in the middle of a period for one. So how about 5/5/2017, 7/8/2018, and August 8th. 4/2020. Okay, sorry about if you hear the announcement in the back. Now, I just press Shift Control F3. Okay, and then so we have some start dates. And let's make a very, very simple construction. Okay, so let's put construction. And then we'll just amount. And what we can do is put a date here. How about we'll put a date? How about a from and a to date? So I guess what I've started to do is I'm going to use this one to also illustrate the and we'll put amount. And then this should maybe have said starting amount, whatever. Okay, and let's say that from this was it, so we go from 4/2015, 4/4/2015, Shift Control 3 to 6-5/217. Okay, Shift Control 3. So, whoops. How about 5/6? Okay, and this better start a couple days later. This is if this is U.S., it's a month, and then the day, right? I can never get that right anymore. And let's make this 800, okay? And oops, Shift Control 1, 800. Now, I've got to find another place to. I'm sitting all sideways. This really sucks. Let's make it, 201 6 to July 208, and let's change that to, this is the month, so let's make it 6, and then we'll make it 9. Of course, that doesn't matter, okay? And, I'm so sick of this. Why did I do this? Okay, and we'll just make it 1 year later. How's that? Okay, so I don't know why. So we have 3 different constructions. Let's make this a little bit smaller. This one 700, and let's make this one 400. Now, so what we're going to have is staggered amounts. I don't know what you'd call the maybe project completion date is when project 3 starts or something, but we're not even going to worry about that right now, and I've got to put it on pause because I've got to find a better place to sit. Okay, let me try this. So let's start with let's make a little monthly model, and let's put our time period. Now, of course, we'll why don't we do it up here? Okay. So let's put a time period, and have no. Let's put it. We need a start and an end, and I'm going to do it monthly. So let's put. How about the end? Let's start in 2015. So let's start with 12/31/2001. Okay. Shift Control 3, and then we add 1 to that, and then we put equal EO month. That would work. And go up, comma 0. Okay. Shift Control 3, and then we just go forward. I want to go. Oops, there's. I hope that doesn't irritate you that much. What happened to my? Oh no, it doesn't show me the. Okay. Why did it stop? Shift Control right arrow. And okay. And let's assume that that's enough. Okay. And then, okay, I guess that announcement I'm going to have to pause. Okay, I'm going to start with the construction. And when we have these timing problems, let's put project 1. Of course, we can copy this. And let's put this down and put dates. And this is, or we could even put percent of period. And then we'll put the construction amount. Okay, there's some other people walking by here. And then we'll copy those. So that's the second thing. And then let's put some operating. Let's put some the operating here, and we'll put percent of period, and we'll do the same thing. So excuse me, Vivian, that I am making part of this video just about getting the construction right in different periods, but whatever. And then operating amount. And then we'll put those 3 things together, and then after that we're going to then put the financing. Now, here's going to be the problem. Let me just introduce the problem. We could put a standard sources and uses in, and then separate that with a cash flow waterfall, but some of these will be operating that, and some of them be finished. the real date at which the COD starts is unclear. So one of the techniques to manage this will just be to put all the cash flows together and do one thing. If it's negative cash flows, then we've got to draw, and then if it's not negative cash flows, we've got to repay. But when we start repaying, we want to repay with a sculpting method. So, and I'm doing this kind of winging it a little bit, and so we'll start with just how about we'll start with operating cash flow less the construction cash flow, and then we'll put net cash flow. Now, if this is kind of a standard just way to manage things, and then we'll put draws when cash flow is negative, and then we have to put, I suppose we could stop there, and then we put repayments. And to put repayment, we want to put sculpted repayments. And then finally, after we put the sculpted repayments, well, let's put the somewhere up here we should put, I suppose, the interest paid. Okay, now to do all of this, I'm going to insert a few lines. To do all of this, we better start with our debt balance, and we put an opening balance, and add the draws less the repayments. Okay, and let's get the closing balance, and then put an interest in here, and we've got kind of oops, I lost something, didn't I? So we have for net cash flow cash flow for repayment. Okay, and then the sculpted repayment, and finally cash flow after repayment, and then we can have dividends. Okay, now we're going to the sculpted repayment. This is going to be the big issue that Ruby had mentioned, and just by looking at it, you can see that it's going to be a problem. How do we start it, and what should we do, and how can we make it flexible? If this cash flow is negative, perhaps we can put sculpting in and take things out of the reserve account. We can do a whole lot of things. Okay, now to get this started, I'm going to first go to the chapters, and in chapter 21 there is a file named percent of time or something like that. Okay, half year and quarter. I think the percent of time. I hope. Well, I used to have too many of these, but this will allow us to manage all of those things that I showed you. Now, when you have a function, you can't just open it. You actually have to insert it. So what we can do is go to developer, macros. Now we'll make I'm just going to make a functions subroutine, and then underneath that, paste that. So now we have, hopefully in this file, we have this percentage of time function. And the way we put it over here, we put a start, just like we do in an end. And let's put the start and the end date. Oops. What happened to the... just a minute. This was the construction. Well, we have the start and end date. Oh, the end date for the operations, I guess, is the end date for the project, which I haven't really done. Okay, so there's the start date, and we go to end date. Okay, and we have these different dates, and then this is really just another version of a true-false with one minor thing. So percent of time, and then you can either press the FX key, or I think you can press Shift F3. You can press Shift F3 and it does the same sort of thing. And now the start of operation is this one, and we press F4 a few times. And then the end of operation is this one, and we press F4 a few times. And then the start date is the one at the top, and you press F4 just a couple of times. And the end date is up at the top, and we press F4 a couple of times. Okay? And it says correctly. Now I'm going to also... I don't believe I have generic macros on it, do I? Surprising. I have this read PDF to Excel open. I'm going to close that. Not really have to have you see me do that. And then open the Excel generic macros. So hopefully, I think I just was here. So we just open that. Recall what that will do is allow us to get all the nice little macros and shit. Ah, damn it. Okay, after that damn crash, and it wasn't the percentage of time function, it was just I had an old version of this. I had something wrong with my generic macros, but we pressed this percentage of time function, and then I press Shift Control P, and then I press Shift Control R, and then it gives me that for this one, and then I press Control D, and it gives me what percentage of the month, and oh, here it goes. Here's what you started, and here's what you ended. Now I did add a few other things here. Okay, I also added a end of period, and I added some O&M costs and some ramp up rates in order that the cash flow really will be negative. Even the operating cash flow will be negative in the early period. So really to get this issue of how to sculpt. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off fairly soon. I'm sure it's extremely loud right now. But I just want to get this cash flow stuff done. Okay, so once we have this, we can take, let's try this. Let's take the sum. Now, so if we take this is our sum, and then we can just ratio this sum. So I'm going to stop this. I changed my mind about something. This might be worth doing. Let's take this number divided by the sum of this one. Shift Control right arrow, and then press F4 on this. So we just lock on the columns, not the rows, and that gives us the percentage of the total that we're going to be spending. It's a flat construction. Okay, and then we can press this Control D, and then we can take this one and multiply it by the construction amount. So we get some sort of we get construction, Control D, Shift Control R, Shift Control 1, whoops, Shift Control 1, did I copy that across? So we get our construction, and then we can total it, okay? I have absolutely no idea how badly this video is going to be. I'm going to stop it, and then we're going to do the same thing for the operating cash. Okay, a brief note on how I made the revenue growth. This is a kind of thing somebody might be proud of, but it actually really sucks. It sucks bad. This says if this isn't zero, it's true. That's the way to do it. And if the date is less than this date, then take the 10%. Otherwise, take kind of a stable growth rate of 3%. But I don't enter it. It's very bad. And multiply the whole thing by this, so it switches off. So it's a horrible little formula, but I just wanted to get it there. And then I'm going to put in the revenues now with different growth rates and the operation expenses, and then we'll get the net cash flow. Okay. And rather than having Vivian have to watch this whole stupid thing, I'm already on 20 minutes. I'm going to come back to you when the cash flow is finished, and we'll talk about sculpting with negative cash. Hello. Okay, this is a continuation of the negative sculpting analysis. So, as you recall, and I thought I had lost all of our prior video, made a timeline, we made some growth, and I was struggling a bit, but we now have cash flow, and this time, unlike so many of the other discussions where we have a distinct point where the construction ends and the the operation begins, this time we have this mix. Sometimes we have negative cash flows, and then here's the construction ending. We still have negative cash flows because of the assumption I made, and then whoop, suddenly we have some positive cash flows, and there was a little positive cash flow in here somewhere. I don't know what happened here. Why? Oh, we had some revenue start, and then the CapEx 1 July 18. Well, I'll leave that. I'm going to leave that. And so if we graph this, this is what people who haven't seen Tollways kind of laugh at. We have these negative cash flows that the construction period could be defined as ending here or something. Excuse me, I have a funny increased cash flow. I think I might fix that one, and then we have the gradual increase. So we'll sculpt against this, and we'll go somewhere here and put some debt underneath these cash flows. Let me just pause the video for a minute and get that. Let's just look at what happened, and this happened in about some period 70. Okay, what I did was just modified the formula a bit, and I made it end of month of the current month. The month here, and then put -1, so we got our maintenance expenses early. So here's our cash flow that we'll use to sculpt. Shift Control C, fix the inputs now. These are all not inputs, these are all from the outputs. So there's our little project. And now let's put some sculpting in. Now here is the big trick, or the big thing. So I lost a little sleep over Vivian here yesterday, because I thought, well, how can we do this now? The issue, in my very, very, very humble opinion, is we could make sculpting, we could even somehow figure out the debt draws here, but we could well, don't know how we want to finance the cash flows if they're negative. We'll put some sculpted debt. Now the issue is if we start repaying the debt once now I don't have the cash flow, but once the cash flow gets to be positive, there's not going to be much of a problem. We can sculpt. We can figure out how much we can finance the debt first. We can put a debt and equity in. We'll have a little bit of standard circular reference if we use equity first. If we use pro rata, I suppose we could finance the percent of capex net of cash flow. Perhaps we'll do a couple of those. Let's not waste a lot of time on that. Let's really start with the sculpting. So just to restate, if I could say, well, let's start the sculpting here if we had zero interest, then it's not a big problem. Then we figure out how much debt you can get from the future sculpting, and you can figure out how you're going to put this debt when we have negative cash flow. And I suppose why don't we make do something simple. We'll make the debt come out first, and then the equity, and watch this screw up. But let me make sure the sculpting, I'm going to really make sure the sculpting works before we even finance all the debt. Or we could maybe make some really simple kind of assumption that we have some bond that gets financed and the rest comes from equity. Maybe that's what we'll do first, just to illustrate the problem, I hope. Okay, so what we're going to do is in the sculpting. Now, if you want to make that date at which the sculpting begins a flexible date that somehow looks up on when the cash flow is negative, then we'll have a big problem, because interest is part of the cash flow and interest is part of the sculpting problem. So then we'd have a real circular reference problem. So I'm going to do it without this. So let's start with our target DSCR. How about, well, I don't know, 1.3 or something. And then we'll put the interest rate. Let's put a 5% rate or something in here. And then we'll have the repayment. No, let's put the start of repayment. That's the big thing. We have to put some kind of date in here. Now, if we look at this one, we can say, why don't we make this graph a little better, since I'm going to perhaps use this. So we take the net cash flow. If you want to make the graph, let's try this one. So let's press Shift Control right arrow, and then press Shift F8. I've just started this whole Shift F8 business because one of my friends asked me to make a little video, and we go down here to the net cash flow. See, I press Shift F8 and I took my hands off of the computer, and then press F11, and then we have the dates. So let's get rid of this one. Okay, and then we see that, well, this date is 30 June 2021, something like that. Okay, now why don't I just look at that to make sure we have the right kind of date here. So let's start 1 September 2020. Okay, so now if then we can put tenor. Let's put in years. Okay, and let's say that's 20 years. And then we can put end of debt period or something. Alright, and then we'll put e-date and put 20 times 12. Shift Control F3. Okay, so that's the end. Alright, and if we put this, hard code this in, I think the process is much simpler. And we can put, why don't we put bond issue date, just so we will pretend it's a bond, and then we can do something else. And when did we start this whole thing? How about let me see, when are we starting the projects? 4/15. How about we'll make it 1/1/16? So we have to put some equity in, and then we have our bond dates. Okay, so that's the kind of assumptions, and then let's start our project financing. And to start our project financing, we're going to get the operating cash flow and the target debt service. But before we do this, let's put a standard debt repayment switch. Okay, I hope that typing isn't too loud. That can be a little irritating. You have to hear the typing on the video. And so our start of repayment is here. Our end of repayment is here, and since we put it at the beginning of the month, we can use an and make sure that this one is greater than or equal to the first one, and we go back to the top one. Of course, fancy people will say, whoops, I don't want any F4s on that. I actually want 2 F4s. This one would be a little better, is less than, not less than or equal to this one, and you can press the F4 key like that, I guess. Shift Control R, and if you want to, I would count how many trues we have, and I meant count if. I'm just woken up, so that's my excuse. So we have 240, and now 240 divided by 12 is 20, so we have exactly the right number of true and falses. So why don't we call this operating cash flow for sculpting? Okay, and if we take this one and multiply this by our well, oh shit, no, I'm gonna, our operating cash flow for sculpting is the revenues minus the operating costs minus any capex we have. Okay, and we press Shift Control R, and then we put the target DSCR. Now, I was hesitating, as you can see. I was just hesitating because what we could have done is put a one-time DSCR in the negative cash flows, and when we have the the negative cash flows and it's sculpting, it will show you kind of how much the financing of the cash flow could be. So let's do it simply first, and then we'll start talking about these other kind of options you might do. And so this just gives the target debt service. Shift Control R. So, whoops. And we multiply this, and we okay, and then we keep going, and I hope it. Come on. Did we? Yes, so it stops there. Okay, and then we can now we'll put our debt balance in here, and why don't we call this our permanent? Okay, and we of course we need a closing balance. Now, why don't we, for the closing balance, we can, for now, let's just begin with the closing balance at the date. So why don't we put, just to be a little transparent, debt issue date, and simply put a switch, just as that's a one-time switch. Okay, and we put this in, and then we'll put our closing balance. So we say now let's just below here, let's make our NPV of the debt. Now, why don't we just practice this? So to be a little precise, let's put interest rate index, just in case we had a varying rate interest that I didn't put in. So we'll do the technique. We'll make the technique now. So, oops, F4. I didn't need to press the F4 there, of course. So we put, let's start with here, and then put multiplied by 1 plus the interest rate. But when we put the interest rate, let's multiply it by the debt repayment date, not the debt issue date. So it just stops at 1, stops at 1, blah, blah, blah. And then finally we, there we go. Let's slow down a little there, 105, 110. And of course I did it wrong, because I should have made this a monthly rate. Shift Control P. And we don't do any fancy compounding with the interest, because these interest rates occur, well, I should take that back. If it's really monthly, this could be made on a semi-annual basis. These interest dates should reflect the actual semi-annual dates, and you could make the monthlies reflect the semi-annual dates. But that would be a pain, I think. Well, okay, enough of that. I'm rambling. Now, then we can take the target debt service here and just divide that by the interest index to get the NPV. So let's put sum product. Okay, and how about this one divided by this one? Excuse me for this. Okay, and that's our total debt that we can issue. Our repayment, we don't need to know yet. Well, we can go ahead and put the formula in, I suppose, is the target debt service minus the interest. So this doesn't have anything fancy in it. All we have is the and look at this. I put it. We put this in now. The opening balance is equal to the closing balance, and the draws we don't have yet. Well, let's make the let's make the issue date one month before this. Okay, so we can put E date. EO, how about EO month? We take that date, and then you put -1, and then you say, well, let's put -2, and then +1. So that will give you just the month before. So then for the draws, if we want to just make this just our permanent debt schedule, we can multiply that by the switch, and then and then the repayments are just on this one. So our closing balance is our opening balance plus the draws minus the repayments. And the interest, let's use our same interest rate, is the opening balance multiplied by the interest. Okay, now this doesn't have taxes. If this had taxes, this whole thing would be enormously painful. Without taxes, it all works just fine. So, except I have negative repayments because I put some interest in. Not a big problem, because what we're going to do is manually adjust this. Okay, so what we'll do is just begin here, and then we have a very small repayment, and then it goes high, and I'm going slowly, and then finally we have the final repayment. And notice that the closing balance, let's say the opening balance when this is true is positive, but the closing balance should be, the opening balance when it's false should be negative, so we can put a little test in here as well. And we'll just use the sum product, and we put the first put the debt repayment switch, comma false, comma opening balance, and whoops. Okay, I guess you know that. Why didn't that work? Just a minute. Because I meant to use some ifs. Duh. Oh God. That's really bad. Okay, and that's just about 0, so we better put round of this, or 0 equals 0. Okay, so that's the basic sculpting. Now I'm sure this is not what Vivian had in mind, but it begins the discussion at least. Okay. Actually, we had negative repayments, and that's kind of interesting. Let me just see that. So we're which is maybe fine, but these negative repayments, because our DSCR is above 1, No, just a minute. No, these negative repayments are fine, actually. They're just paying the interest. They're paying a portion of the interest. And the debt service is covering, there's more cash flow than debt service. So suppose that's all kind of reasonable. Now what I'm going to do is stop this video, and then we'll try a few other things, okay? And we'll issue the debt. We'll try some other sculpting.